on, golf fans? It's your boy Gsluke with our round 4 live stream for the Baycurrent Classic. Going to get you ready for all of your exposure today with a look at the DFS slate and what we're doing on Draftkings. Also a look at the underdog and the prize pick side, and trying to cap off this week with another day of profit on what has been an unbelievable week so far. Our DFS slate, some of our outrights in the mix here heading into Sunday. Also on the DFS side, pretty solid for the GPP perspective as well. And for props, we've profited every single day. Yesterday ended up being a 5-0 prop sweep for all of our pick 'em exposure. So let's see if we can add on top of it here for Sunday. And feel free to hit me in chat with any questions that you've got. But we're going to go through a weather report, ownership towards the top end of the board. We'll talk some lineup construction as well for DFS. And we're going to go through stat averages, some props and underdog and prize picks that I like. But anything on top of that you're curious about can be a player pool deep dive, specific questions for DFS, strategy-based stuff, whether it's for props or for fantasy. Feel free to let me know. But it looks like we got Jose in the chat already, and using some colorful imagery there, saying that he got screwed by the crypto drop. But you said the Patreon props got you eating good. And yeah, we ended up sweeping out there for last night. A whole weekend has been pretty solid there. So I hate to hear that you got screwed by that crypto drop. I hear it had to do with some of the news with tariffs and whatnot. So I hate to hear that for you, but glad that the Patreon made up for it a bit. So let's try and do so again on Sunday to help you out with that, because yeah, I'm not a crypto investor, but I'm sure that would be pretty damn frustrating if your whole portfolio went down. But let's go through what we saw on the golf course, which was a much harder round 3, which was to be expected with all the rain they had forecasted. Also winds closer to 10 to 15 miles an hour. So round 1 it played the hardest. That's when we had the 40-mile-an-hour winds. Round 2 it was completely calm and it played to a -2 average. Round 3 it was kind of split down the middle. But for round 4, what we'll see with the weather is that it looks a lot calmer and a lot clearer from the rain perspective. You're talking about sub 5-mile-an-hour winds the entire day. It looks clear, a little bit of rain towards 5 p.m., but play is pretty much going to be finished up by the time that happens. And your wind gusts are sub 10 miles an hour for the first half of the day. But for the afternoon, when a majority of your leaders will be playing, it's only about 10 to 13 miles an hour. So you're talking about almost ideal conditions for these players. I'm not sure if I'd say that's as calm as what it was for round number 2. However, because of all the rain that they got on Saturday, this is going to be a much softer golf course now. And the greens are going to be more receptive, be able to spin the ball back to some of those pin locations. And even the fairways are going to be easier to hold as well. So I think scoring is going to be about that -1.5 to -2 that we had from round number 2. But there's even upside, I would say, for it to get easier than that round 2 scoring average because of the fact that it's so much softer. So that's going to be something that we go through when we get to props later. But I think the boards are completely mispriced for underdog prize picks, the sports books as well, whether it's strokes or the birdie or better lines. I think scoring is going to improve rather drastically, which means for our Sunday DFS purposes that we're going to have some good scores in there. It's not going to be all about the place and points. It's not going to be a US Open type of conditions on Sunday where something like even par is going to get the job done. You're still going to have to shoot something at least probably -3, -4. And if I'm right about scoring conditions, perhaps even -5, -6 to make it to the optimal lineup. So placement points are going to matter. It's worth throwing that out there as well. Unlike rounds 2 and 3, we don't have to worry about that aspect of DFS. You do for Sunday DFS. Sunday is where you reintroduce the placement points into the strategy, which means we're going to still have to favor the later starters, even though weather looks almost completely flat throughout the day. Even the temperatures are relatively consistent from the start to the end of play today. However, because we have to take some guys that finish in the top 5, top 10 when it's all said and done, we're going to be favoring some of the later starters because of that. So it's not really weather-based. It's more so strategy-based on why we're taking that side. But that's what it's looking like for scoring. And don't sleep on some of the earlier starters, though we're going to be favoring the later half to get some leverage. And in particular, because scoring conditions are going to be so good, you're going to get a few of the players that are out of contention that shoot something like -6 or -7. And, if they shoot that -7 score, that could very well be needed to take down the large field GPP. And in particular, if you're in the large field GPPs and need to get some differentiation into your lineups, make sure you're not duplicating yourself and make sure that you can move up those GPPs. It's a pretty good idea to mix in some of those earlier guys. So that's the weather. We're going to circle into ownership here next, and then talk some lineup construction to round off DFS. But for the ownership perspective, we're going to go through the top 10 highest owned players, which for rounds 2 and 3, you saw a little bit of bias towards the top end of the leaderboard. Well, that gets ramped up even more here on Sunday, because unlike rounds 2 and 3, where you don't get the placement point bonus, now there's actually a reason for using these guys in the top 5. So a Max Grazerman, who's tied for the 54-hole lead, he's 42% owned. Xander Schauffele at $11,700 because he's tied for that lead. He's at 32.6%. So we know where a lot of the field is going to go with their plays, which makes it rather obvious from the game theory perspective. And that doesn't mean that you have to fade every single one of these players towards the top that's getting ownership. It's just that we're going to know who's going to be chalky. So when you're clicking your names into your lineups, there's not going to really be that unknown factor of knowing, maybe this guy is getting some last second steam. That doesn't really happen on Sundays. On Sundays, it's pretty clear cut on who's going to be the high owned plays and who are going to be the guys that are a little bit overlooked. And it's the players starting in that top 10 that are getting a lot of the extra attention. So unlike the last couple rounds where it was almost primarily 8, 9, and 10K players that we saw in the top 10 of the ownership, now we've got guys like Echeverria sneaking in, who's there at -9. He's only $7,800. Benny Ann at -9. He's about 22% combined ownership. You've got Asahith Thagala at $7,900. Matt Wallace also cracking that top 10, which you didn't really see a whole lot of in the first couple days. So that's how the slate differs a bit. Ownership really condenses onto that top end of the leaderboard, which you're going to have to take. You're going to have to eat some of this chalk in at least, I'd say 2 to 4 spots would be the sweet spot for how much of the top 20 that you're playing in your lineups. But the other 2 to even 4 spots, you could even have 4 differentiated spots in a lineup, I would say, in particular in the large field GPPs. You might want to consider going to the middle to the bottom end of the board. As I previously mentioned, lots of scoring to be had out there. And in particular, I don't think that you're just going to get away with shooting -2. Like one of these -9 guys, they shoot -2. They tie the expected scoring average. I've got it about -2 for today. If they do that, that's not going to be an optimal play. You're going to get lapped by the guys that are shooting -6, -7, and maybe not even getting to that top 10 because the birdie production far outweighs what you're getting for placement points. I mean, because it's a no-cut event as well, everyone is getting some sort of placement points in this kind of field. So even your scrubs that are towards the bottom end of the board that maybe shoot -7 and get to like T20 or something like that, they're going to far outscore those guys that shoot -2 towards the top. So that's why I think you only have to have 2 of those players at least in lineups, up to 4. If you're in a cash lineup or you're in a smaller field GPP, then maybe you have 4 of the top 20 in your lineups, but you don't have to have 4 of them in every single case. That's what I'm going to point out there. For in terms of my player pool tags, it's a lot of what we had for round 3. I'm still looking for high upside golfers. The shots gained metrics are completely unreliable this week, so we're relying on things where we don't have to look at those kind of stats. High upside golfers, guys that make a whole lot of birdies, those are especially the kind of players that I'm looking for some leverage, taking at lower ownership, hoping they can have that kind of a spike round. I'm still looking at course fits. They've actually not gone that great for us this week. This has been the one category that's been lagging behind, but I'm going to stick to it. Maybe we'll get that Sunday regression and some of these course fits will finally go off for us. The good bentgrass putters, that went quite well for our round 3 exposure, so I'm going right back to that. And then on top of that, I added in these placement point players to try and take advantage of that top 20 because it is so necessary to take down the large field GPPs. But there are a ton of these other players that I'm mixing in there as well. And, this is where a lot of my chalk is. There are a few players that are high upside that I'm using as chalk as well. But these middle 2 categories are really where I'm finding my diamonds in the rough. And, I point out these player pool tags, not to say that you have to do the exact same thing yourself. Course fit tab, you guys can find that on my Patreon page. The bentgrass putting you can see over here is also a part of the spreadsheet. But realistically, I don't want to say you can use anything this week, but you essentially can. You can be very creative about your process if you want to have a way to find some of your diamonds in the rough for round 4, because without reliable shots gained metrics, everyone's in the same position as you, right? Everyone's in the unknown, and you don't really want to do what everyone else is doing. So if you have a creative lane that you've carved out for a week like this, don't be afraid to use it, would be my main recommendation for GPPs. Next up, let's go through lineup construction, and we've already hinted at it quite a bit, but it's just making sure that you have enough placement points for the contest that you're entering. And unlike rounds 2 and 3, where the larger the GPP that you're in, the more differentiated you want to be about it, you still want to get some differentiation into your big field GPP lineups, but you're probably going to have at least 3, even 4 of the top 5 to take down the large field GPP. And when that's the case, when you have to have pretty much almost the exactly perfect lineup to take something down, that means you're going to have to eat a little bit more chalk in those large field GPPs. So I think it's a little bit of a misconception when we're looking at the Sunday showdown slate on how you need to approach it in those kind of large field contests. In the large field contest, you're building to build the absolute nuts. So when we're clicking in players, we need to have that in the back of our mind of like, we're trying to beat. It's a smaller field this week, right? It's not as big of a tournament. So we don't have the 50 to 100,000 entry contest like we sometimes do at majors for round number 4. But even on a week like this, when it's like 2 to 10,000 entries at the very most, you still have to be thinking about what kind of entry is going to take down a contest with 10,000 entries in it. And when people know that placement points in play and they're really prioritizing the top end of the board, you're going to have a damn good lineup to pull that off. So I want 3, probably 4 players in the top 20 in a lot of my large field GPP lineups. If we go with a 3-3, that's going to be more differentiated, right? 3 guys towards the top, 3 leverage plays. That's going to be give us an extremely low duplication chance. But even in a 4-2, if we're really careful about the 2 leverage plays that we go with, we're going to be totally fine with ownership. So I'm going to show you what that looks like. We're going to go with the 4 chalky guys and then the 2 plays to kind of differentiate it. So let's go with a Grazerman, a Siwoo Kim. Let's throw in a Benny Ann in that 7K range, and then a Minwoo Lee at $8,400. All 4 of these players are not in my player pool. I believe 3 of the 4 are. So there's one of these guys that I don't plan on using. It's not really the names that matter here as much as the lineup construction that I want to show you. We've got 4 players in here, now an average of $7,800 remaining for our last 2 spots. And all of these players that we just threw in here, because they're T8 or better, every single one of them is at least 15% owned, which means we don't really have any leverage in this lineup whatsoever, which means we got to be extremely careful with our last 2 spots. And there's one of 2 ways that we can accomplish our differentiation. We can either do it with leaving salary on the table. That's not really my favorite way, but the better way is to try and find a couple guys that are sub 5 to 7% owned. But if you can do both at the same time, leave a couple $100s on the table and find plays that are reasonably owned, then that's going to ensure that you're not going to duplicate yourself with other lineups in that GPP. And it's also going to make sure that you have that leverage at the same time. So that's personally my favorite when it comes to building some of these larger field contests. Get your 4 stands towards the top end of the board and then really get creative with those last 2. So let's go with the Michael Kim at +4, no placement point potential, but he just won on the TP Pro Tour. He's got some of the best form of anyone out there. And then we're going to leave, let's go $300 or $400 left on the table. It's a kind of push the envelope there. Make sure we're not going to duplicate ourselves, particularly because we have 4 pieces of chalk together. And let's throw in a Gary Woodland or somebody of that sort, right? DraftKings frowns upon you building an entire lineup, but like, let's see, a Tom Kim, if you really wanted to go to somebody that's out of it, has been playing some better golf over the last couple months. Like, you're taking some nasty plays with these leverage plays towards the bottom, but a Michael Kim off a win a couple weeks ago, maybe even go to like I said, a Tom Kim or a Nakajima. Those local guys aren't going to give up heading into the final day. You get one of those players in there, you ensure that your lineup is going to be unique. And also you still get some upside, right? You're not trying to take just some random scrub towards the bottom end of the board. You're just making sure that they're not getting the ownership in the rest of the field. So that's the lineup construction. And if you're in a single entry, I would say that you don't have to have like 4 of these chalky guys towards the top. If you want, you can have the 4 chalky players though. The reason why I say that you can is that you don't have to be as different in those contests to make sure that you're not duplicating yourself. But because you don't have to have the absolute nuts to take them down, and this is the clear thing that I think a lot of people maybe don't get when it comes to the Sunday Showdown process, is when you don't have to have the absolute nuts, you don't have to have all those guys towards the top. Like if you have a bunch of early starters that you think are mispriced, that are under-owned, that are projecting through the roof, even without a whole lot of the placement points, use them in a single entry. You can go with a 3-3. You can even go with a 4-2 in the other direction if you want, where you only have like 2 guys towards the top, if you really love some of those plays that are starting towards the middle to the early part of tee time. So just something to throw out there with the lineup construction. And when I was saying with the tee times, there might be a little bit confusing because we have threesomes off both tees. I was more so mentioning that when we have like the classic set of tee times, when they're starting with like the 2 sums off of one and they're going throughout the day. More so, I guess, look at it with the leaderboard is what I was meaning with that, is that the guys towards the bottom or the middle part of the leaderboard are the ones that you might want to consider in those sort of contests a little bit more. So that's what I've got for Showdown for round number 4, guys. A little bit of strategy talk and, of course, some player pool stuff on top of that as well. The main thing with the player pool without these shots gained metrics, and if you're just joining us, if you haven't seen these live streams so far this week, the shots gain metrics all over the place. They're BS. If you go hole by hole, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. They're hardly registering every shot, and even the shots they register are clearly off. I mean, you have guys putting it further away from the hole than when they started, which is just clearly not happening. So I wouldn't use these if I were you. So you have to be more creative about it. And that's why we spent so much time talking about those alternative ways that you could get to players. You could even look at the best players from like 125 to 175. There's a lot of iron shots in that range this week. You could look at the best round 4 scores. And I didn't do that myself, but I think that's a really good idea. You could look at the guys that play the best on Sundays. This would be a really good slate to attack that sort of thing. You just have to handle it, and at least in my opinion, a little bit differently than some of those other ones. What's going on, Carolina Reaper? Welcome on in. And yeah, let me know if you have any questions. For the prop side of things, I think we've got a massive edge for Sunday. And you guys know, I normally don't say that unless I truly mean it. The sports books, in my opinion, are way off on their boards, not even close from where they should have them. So round 3 played harder. We knew that. We talked about that yesterday. A few people in chat seemed surprised that I thought I was going to play harder. Well, it played 2.4 strokes harder than what we had in round number 2. So that was obviously correct. Birdie average dropped to 3.6 per round, actually dropped even further than I thought it was going to. And the bogey average actually went up to about 3.5. I thought it was going to be like 3 to maybe 3.25. I told you I was conservative with those projections because I don't like to go too overboard with it. And it was even more impactful than what we thought it was going to be. So that was great for our exposure. I took all fades today. It's part of the reason that we ended up sweeping on that. But for round 4, these averages are almost completely baloney because it looks completely calm for almost all of the day. You've got 10, maybe 12 miles an hour of wind when it comes to the wind gusts in the afternoon. And most importantly, this is where I think the sports books have really messed up, is because they have the board a little bit easier than round number 3, which I tend to agree with. But the course is also soft. They got a lot of rain during play. And maybe their lines makers just aren't waking up, weren't watching play. I figure a lot of people this week probably aren't watching the play. Well, they were playing in an absolute downpour. That's why it played difficult. That was why we called for it to play so much more difficult. And there was a lot of wind. It was blowing out there. It was 25 to 30 mile an hour winds at times. When it's completely calm and you get a soggy golf course, that's when these guys go nuclear. So the fact that they have the board priced pretty close to what they had for round number 3 is just blasphemous. It makes absolutely no sense. And to go back to the average from round 2, this is when it was completely calm. It wasn't even wet out there. It played -2. So with calm conditions and a wet golf course, I'm going to put it in the -1.5 to -2 range, kind of similar to yesterday. I like to be conservative about my projections because, if I give my actual take on what I think conditions are going to be, I would play every single prop on the board. Like literally, that's how off the board probably is. But to keep myself a little bit more prudent and to not go overboard in my exposure, again, just trying to be a little bit smarter about the exposure that we're putting in, we'll say that it plays -1 to -2. But with it playing -2 in round number 2, I will at least throw this out there. There's a chance it plays -2.5, -3 for today. There's a chance it plays significantly easier than what we had in round number 2. And if that's the case, this board is like comically off. And I guess it logged me out there. So let me go ahead and log back into Underdog so that we can do this. 1 second here, guys. I have to refresh. I don't want to give away my password. Now it says network error. Well, that's kind of annoying. I guess I need to close my Underdog tab and open a new one. It's probably the best way to go about that. Oh, it looks like the Underdog app is down or something. So because I'm getting some sort of like back, I'll just show you guys. Look at this. Let me just make sure that there's not any sort of like personal info on this. I don't think there is. Look, this is what we're seeing when we bring up Underdog now. So unfortunately, we're going to have to wait a few minutes to take a look at that board. But if we take a look at the Draftkings board, because they pretty much just copy and paste the odds from over here, it is comically off. It just makes absolutely no sense. You've got a lot of these guys at 4.5 and juiced under. The birdie average, by the way, they go back to the round 2 average, was 4.5 per round exactly. And that includes a lot of the Japan Tour scrubs towards the bottom that are outliers that are really impacting that average. They've got guys at 4.5 and juiced under. They've got elite tier birdie makers like Wyndham Clark at close to even money at 4.5 birdies. I just completely disagree with that. I just do not agree with those sort of odds whatsoever. And like an Adam Scott at even money at 4.5, like, okay. Like, I don't think that that's remotely accurate. Guys like McGreevy juiced -175 towards the under at 4.5. Like, I know he's not an elite tier birdie maker, but like, my goodness, it's like they think it's going to be a 3.75 to 4 birdie average, and that just can't be further from the truth. So I think there's a lot of value to be had on there. He said Vegas is at it, sabotaging me. I wouldn't say that. It's probably just Underdog and their slapdick site not working, but it's crazy how every time we're live, that stuff seems to happen. We're looking at a Benny Ann for an under at 69.5. Yeah, man. So that's what I mean by the board being entirely off. Pretty much everyone at 69.5 I would take for an under, because the guys they have posted on DraftKings Fanduel aren't the scrub players. It's the PGA Tour players that are playing in this kind of event. Any decent PGA Tour player, and I have to add that tag because there are some guys in this field that suck, like legitimately some of the worst players that we have in the world playing in this field. But of the legit PGA Tour players that we have playing, almost all of them I take for the under at 69.5. In fact, if you're getting plus money on it, like plus 115, like you're getting on that, I would run to play a player like Benny Ann for that. So yeah, I think the scoring average is probably going to be -1.5, -2. So have an average day and cover that feels like a steal at plus money. So I'm on that in a lot of different players. He said, am I a college football fan or do I mostly do golf and professional sports? Yeah, I don't watch college sports, man. And this is a take that a lot of people disagree with, but it's always been my take. College sports are like watching high school sports. I really couldn't give a rat's ass. They all suck. The really good players in college football just like run around the rest of the defense. And it's like you're playing Madden or college football with the talent discrepancy. Like literally you see them, like Genty was probably the most crazy example of it because of the sorry ass skulls that he was playing against. It literally looked like he was on rookie mode as a 99 overall and like ultimate team or something like that and running for 500 yards every game. How do people enjoy that? And it's not every game that's like that. I understand that. But like 80% of the college games are 14 plus point spreads. How is that watchable? How is a product that anyone enjoys? And I went to a school that didn't have the best college football team. So that probably has a lot to do with it. Pitt is never anything special. So I don't really ever get engaged because of that. But I'm a Notre Dame fan. I've always been since I even grew up. But like I can't even get up for them when they're playing well and they're in the freaking playoffs. I didn't even watch their games the last couple of years. And they've made it towards the end. To me, it's laughable. So yeah, sorry, that's a hot take. I know a lot of people won't agree with that, especially now that they're paying the players. They're switching teams every single year. It's lost its touch. There's no tradition to it. Half the rivalries and all the realignment have completely fucked that up. Like Pitt doesn't play West Virginia every year. They don't play Penn State every single year. So like they just don't have those games that matter anymore. In my opinion, it's a terrible product. It's down there alongside the WNBA. WNBA is completely unwatchable to me. There are sports leagues that I just literally, you could not pay me to go out there and watch. And college football is becoming one of those. It has not always been that way. It's been more so a thing over the last year or so where it's really started to go downhill. And I think it's the paying players. I honestly didn't think it was going to be a big issue, but it is. Them switching teams every couple minutes is stupid. You said X is plus 105 at 69.5. Is he actually? I didn't think that he was. I think that's 68.5 that you're talking about, right? There's no way that Xander's at 69.5 and at that kind of number. If he is, that's crazy. Yeah, he's at 68.5 and plus 100 towards the under. Yeah, let me know if that was a typo that you had there. But yeah, 69.5 would be pretty crazy. He said WNBA would be nice if they lowered the rim. Yeah, I'm not going to go too much into that because it'll trigger some people if I give my true opinion. But you're right. There's just no excitement in the WNBA. Shooting percentages are lower scoring games. Yeah, just there's a lot of products like baseball. Let's talk about baseball too. Baseball is unwatchable. I played baseball growing up. It was my main sport, for goodness sakes. Before I turned into a golfer when I got into high school, I can't watch a baseball game anymore. It's just they've got to work on a lot of the products that we have around here. Baseball, football is becoming unwatchable. You can't have any big hits anymore. I don't know. Maybe I'm just a nostalgia person, right? I like looking back on these leagues and the stuff that happened before and the excitement, but I don't know. Like I like the big hits. I'm a Steeler fan. I like when guys get hit dirty. That's just kind of what we like in the AFC North football. You can't do that anymore. It kind of sucks. You said, oh shit, you're right. 68.5. Yeah, man, 69.5 plus money would have been like empty 5 units on it. But even at 68.5 at plus money, I think that's pretty decent. You said WNBA unders and Angel Reese rebounds. Oh boy. I've seen the TikToks of people doing that. Those are pretty decent content. He said darts is more intense than baseball now. Dude, the darts clips, I've never watched a darts match, but the clips that I've seen, the crowd goes crazy. So you've got to love that. Let me see if we can get underdog up. We're doing a little bit of stalling there so we can get the underdog board back. It doesn't look like they have underdog back up yet. So I guess I'll just tell you the 2 props that I took because I already know what I like on underdog. It was an over on Kevin Yu birdies and an over on Nikolai Højgaard birdies. So just to show you the odds on the 2, I think they were like minus 130 or something. So it's not like they're like massive odds in our favor. So let's go to the right board so we can find those. So there's Nikolai at minus 130. There's Kevin Yu at minus 130 towards the over. Again, not plus EV value when you're just at that minus 130 mark. But I think these boards are severely mispriced, right? We've already mentioned that I think everyone on here is off by a half a birdie to a birdie. So if they're already close to plus EV value, minus 140 is when we hit that quote unquote plus EV mark for pretty much every slip that you're playing on like underdog or prize picks. If they're already close to that, and I think they're off by a birdie, then they're massive, massive value at those sort of numbers. So that's why I bet those 2 was only a 2.58x payout on underdog, which is utter horseshit. That's another thing. These pick'em sites just completely screw you on the correlation, especially when you're entering birdie or better props like we have on those 2. But just like we had for the last few rounds, these sports books have been completely off on their boards. So I've entered the terrible payout props, whether it was the two fades together for 2.58x, whether it's two overs on birdies here for that same sort of payout. I will only do that when the boards are this mispriced. So I'm doing it again. It's gone well this week. I don't know what it is about these sportsbook line makers. My guess is that they're just not watching the golf. They're not staying up. It's not in their budget. They're not being paid to stay up through midnight to watch it. And us hardcore actual golf fans, the ones that care about golf every single week, like you just can't fake that at an event like this. Well, we're going to be able to take advantage of that because we're staying up. We know the conditions. We know how they're going to change from day to day. So when they fix underdog, I don't know whenever they're going to go out there and do so. Go ahead and take this too. Again, it was a Kevin Yu over on birdies and Nicola Højgaard over on birdies. Both were even money on that slate, but the correlation multiplier just completely nukes it. So pretty disappointing there. Let's look at the round scores too. So it's not just those, and that was the first slip that I entered, and the only one as of right now, because we just got the boards, or I guess we had the boards, but I just got to the boards before we went live on here. I only woke up around noon, so I'm still waking up here personally. But you can see like a Chris Gotterup is at 69.5, and he's minus 130 under, and the same thing applies to the birdie or better board. If I thought the birdie or better board was off by like half birdie to a birdie, I think it's off by about a stroke as well. Maybe even more than a stroke, like a stroke and a half to 2 strokes. If it plays that minus 2.5, minus 3, like I think is possible. And I'll even throw it out there. Do they do lift clean in place after all the rain that they got? Probably not, because Japanese golf courses are unbelievably good draining. I mean, it's some of the best agronomy, if not the best agronomy that we have in the world. In fact, you send people on vacation to Japan that are agronomists to try and learn from all of the great technicians that they have on that side. So same thing. So if it's lift clean in place, I just want to throw that out there. It's probably not going to be. If it is, minus 3.5, minus 4 scoring average is in play. I mean, like it could truly get absurd with the value that we have here. I'm not going to assume the lift clean in place. I'm not even going to consider that at all. If it happens, then great. If it happens, then I'll be dancing around happy, because the value we're getting would just be some of the best we've ever gone at that point. But at the 69.5 mark, if it's off by a stroke, I mean, think about the kind of value that we're getting on some of these, because these are even money on sites like Underdog. So they can't look at it now. It looks like they're having some sort of issues on their end. But when we get that board back, and I'm actually going to try on my phone real quick, because maybe it's just an issue with the web version of it. I don't know why that would be the case, but we might as well check on it. Let's see. No, looks like it's working on my phone. So let me see if Kevin Yu and Nicola Højgaard are still at that same number. One second. So yeah, it looks like Kevin Yu is still at 4.5. If you can't get it to work on your like web version, try to go to your phone, because it's working for me. We'll also, I guess, try and reload it on here and see if they fixed it overall. But yeah, still 2.58x if you take those two together. And let me see if I can log in. It's still giving me network error. I don't know if it's doing that for you guys on your web version, or maybe it's just me and they want to lock me out so that I can't show these props. If that's the case, we'll do it on the phone version. I'll just do it over there. We'll talk through it that way. One of my thoughts on college golf, you think that it's a sport that you can't really fuck up. You just wish the speed of golf would speed up. I mean, yeah, I talk crap about the excitement of these sports, and then I watch golf. So that's about as hypocritical as I could possibly get. So I at least want to admit that that's true, right? But college golf, I hardly watch as well. I mean, it's just not on TV enough for me to really get around it. When I see it on, though, I will 100% tune in and watch it. They just don't advertise it enough. I guess I don't look into it enough, and maybe that's why I don't see the advertisements. But yeah, it's not something I watch that much of either. I'd rather watch the professionals. I only have so much time in a day, right? I try and watch the stuff that I think is the best, which is the professionals in all these different sports. So, and yeah, UFC. You're saying you also watch UFC, so that's a true sport. 2 warriors being locked in a cage. Yeah, I mean, you know that. I love being a UFC fan. I watch a lot of UFC. I'll play a lot of DFS for it. I like that it's only like 4 or 5 hours every week as well, right? It's not like you have to watch it every single night. There's not 162 games. There's not 82 games. It's around there in the NBA and every single season. It's a lot when you have 82 games. I think that's why people really like the NFL. It's that same thing. It's once a week, right? It's kind of like UFC. It's like once a week. Golf is 4 days a week. It's a bit much, a little bit monotonous for a lot of people. That's why I think live going down to 3 rounds, people shitting on it, maybe isn't such a bad idea, because the smaller sample size has worked in a lot of cases. Like you see that with F1 races. They don't do an F1 race every single day. They don't even do one every single week, right? That little bit of limitation actually helps the sport, in my opinion. So yeah, I like UFC and for sure be watching it. He said Luke be running the darts right now. Dude, I wish I was good at darts. I sucked at them in college. I lost a lot of money playing darts. You said Thagala and Echeverria unders are at 70.5. Yeah, I like those. They do have big multipliers on them though, Jose. I think they're like 0.88 and like 0.87x multipliers. So if you're okay with that, maybe you have a different fade you can mix in, or maybe a different sport that you're playing. That'd probably be the best way to do it, because if you take those two together, like you're only getting like a 2x payout on that. So that would be the issue with that. So just maybe if you have something else to mix in on top of it. You said thoughts on the winning score at 268.5. The under is -140, and the winner only has to get to -14. I appreciate you saying the only has to get to -14 part, because I was going to have to do some of that mental math to figure out where it was. Yeah, only has to shoot -2 to get to it. I mean, I would bet that -140, because they've only got to shoot -2 from two guys that are at that number. I think the scoring average is going to be about -2, and that's for the entire field. And actually could be easier than a -2 scoring average. So yeah, I would bet that under in a millisecond, because it's not just like it's anyone that you have at that -12 number. You've got the two best players in form this week. You also get a couple players behind them that could shoot -5, -6 and extend that winning score. I think that makes a whole lot of sense. He said, speaking like a true NASCAR fan, you're referring to Luke Littler. Oh, okay. He said, if he's in there and there's props, follow the Luke. Yeah, Luke Littler's the guy that I see on those clips. I mean, he looks electric. He's one of the younger players. I don't know anything about darts, so I could be wrong about that, but he looks like one of the younger players that they have over there too. Yeah, you love those young prodigies, that's for sure. So on Prize Picks, it's worth mentioning they only have birdie or better matchups up. So you guys know the deal. I'm not going to bet birdie or better matchups. They're an absolute sucker category, and unless there's a massive misprice, which happens once in a blue moon, you're not going to see me betting them really whatsoever. And looking at the board right now, when you have these 0.5s on all of them, it's normally the underside that's ever going to have that value. And I don't really see any of these opponents that are worthy of taking on that direction. So yeah, this is like expected, most likely going to be a stay away board for me. And the reason for that, just to put out my 2-second PSA on these 0.5 birdie or better matchups are a sucker bet, because of that 0.5 means that if they tie, it's going to be an under that hits. And obviously, because the player that's listed is always going to be better than the player that's the opponent, all the slappies and all the casuals in the world go, oh, Colin just has to make more birdies than Isaiah Salinda. But what they don't realize about these players that they use as the opponent is that they don't just pick any random slapdicks. They pick the slapdicks that are aggressive and make a whole lot of birdies. Like Salinda's a great example of that. Salinda's a top 40 birdie maker on tour. Joe Highsmith, though he's extremely unreliable, he misses more cuts than he makes. He's a half decent birdie maker for the kind of player that he is. Mark Hubbard is a top 50 birdie maker. Ryan Gerard, I don't think he's a top 50 birdie maker, but Minwoo's like number 120 on tour. When it comes to birdie or better percentage, they make these a lot closer than you would expect. And like I said, the under is the value 99.99% of the time. And the other thing you also have to consider about this is that when you're making birdies, your average birdies per round usually lies in the 3 to 6 range. Probably 90% of the time, maybe even more than that. You make between 3 and 6 birdies per round. So your push equity, and like I said, a push is an under with these 0.5s. Your push equity is insane on these matchups. Like, people just don't realize the chances for your two players to go out there and tie. And all of that tie equity, which is sometimes 15 to 25% equity for two players to tie at that projection, is an automatic loss. So if 15 to 20% of your equity in that matchup is tied up with a loss on a tie, you only have the other 75% to work with to try and get over that 50% win rate. And unless the player you're going against is an absolute slapdick that sucks, that's probably not going to be doable. So that's the 2 seconds on the birdie or better matchups and why we don't focus that much time on it. But also, everything I just said is why you can sometimes find value on the unders. When you can find a matchup where the player that's listed as a better birdie maker than the guy up top, then you can find some magic. And in fact, I want to look at this one because this Adam Scott, Mark Hubbard might actually be one of those. When I was looking at it and I was kind of pondering it, I was like, I think Hubbard might actually be the better birdie maker. So Adam Scott's number 93, about average, okay? And then Hubbard is number 45 on the PGA Tour in birdie or better percentage. So I probably won't enter it just because these matchups suck. They're, like I said, sucker bets in 99% of the cases. But based on everything that I just said here, this would actually be value towards the under because not only is Mark Hubbard the better birdie maker, but he's also getting that extra 0.5. And in fact, if I end up finding another prop here on Prize Picks that I want to take, and we don't have the DP World Tour board quite yet, but when we get that posted on Prize Picks, if I want to find a pairing, this might be what I end up using for that pairing. So don't sleep on this, but that's the Birdie or Better matchup analysis. It's a lot harder than most people would expect, a lot more complicated than most people would expect as well. But you use that 0.5, you go to the Birdie or Better stats, and then you use that to break these down. And sometimes you can find value in either direction. Let's see if we can log in here on Underdog. They still won't let me log in. Oh, I guess we'll do it on the phone. They're forcing my hand. They're going to be annoying about it, but that's okay. Let's say, do I bet on UFC on the sportsbook at all, or do I only bet golf on the books? I mostly bet golf and football on the books. A lot of football on the books mostly. In fact, even more than golf, I would say. But UFC, every once in a while, one of my buddies will send me his bets that he's taking on the sports books, and I'll, tail those. But outside of that, not really. I just don't really put in the time on the sports books to do my due diligence. And because I'm somebody that is so prudent with what I bet, right? I go out there, I run the analysis on everything before I go out there and deploy units on it. It takes so much time to break down a board to where if I don't have the extra 4 to 5 hours to do so, I don't usually look at that. And I'll take the extra hour or two that I have and put it towards DFS, because DFS doesn't take as much time to break down. I can do it in a much more efficient fashion when looking at the DFS board. Because, for example, like I don't do my own DFS projections for UFC. Like I get projections through Ship It Nation because of my affiliation with them, and I'm able to use like their stone they have over there. I'm able to use that to kind of expedite my process. So that's why I do DFS for UFC. I'm no expert on UFC. I'll throw that out there as well. Even if I did picks, you probably wouldn't want them because I'm pure game theory for UFC. And I'm not going to say too much about it because I have a really big edge on UFC, even though I know nothing about it, which tells you everything you need to know about what I do on it. If you don't duplicate yourself, this is as far as I'll say. If you don't duplicate yourself in UFC DFS and you embrace the chaos of 2 men or 2 women in a cage and the variance that is involved with that, then you can win a lot of money on UFC DFS when the field gets stuff wrong. That's all I'm going to say about it. And you can read between the lines there and kind of figure it out a little bit. But yeah, that's something I always do. And put it this way, if all the chalk wins for a DFS slate, I lose all my money in MMA DFS, and I'm totally fine with that. If a lot of the chalk starts to lose, watch out. I'm probably winning all the money. That's my strategy for it. Let's see. He said he's like 12, Luke Littler. I didn't know he was 12 years old. Holy shit. I thought he was like 18 to 20. He looks older than 12. I know you're exaggerating with that one for sure, but yeah, he's a stud for sure. He said Grazerman for the over at 4.5 birdies. They're both -115. Yeah, he should be juiced heavily towards the over as well. And he's not like an elite tier birdie maker. At least I don't think he is. I think he's like number 40 or 50. Let's see. So number 37, actually a little bit better than I expected. Yeah, even money at 4.5. That's a no-brainer. Let's just work with the 4.5 birdie average. I think it might actually be a little bit better than that in reality. Somebody like Grazerman that's top 50 on the PGA Tour would project for 5 to even 5.5 birdies. So yeah, I can get behind that one for sure. And knowing that they won't post the board quite yet, but you know what? Like I said, we can just bring it up on our phone. So I already gave you guys the Kevin Yu and the Nikolai Højgaard leans at 4.5. I think both of those make quite a bit of sense. But even for the round strokes board, I was looking at that Goddard up under on strokes, Kurt Kitayama, maybe like an under on strokes. With the birdie lines, like there were a few other ones, like a Morikawa at 4.5 kind of makes sense. Who else? And I haven't entered any of these yet, but they're all highly in consideration. And there's a good chance that at least a couple of those are going to get added to a slip here in the next 30 minutes to an hour on my Patreon page. But I'm just like scrolling through them. A Minwoo Lee at 4.5 birdies, a Siwoo Kim at 4.5 birdies, a Michael Thorbjornsen, a Max Grazerman at 4.5 birdies. All those are even money at that number. They're all things that I'll probably add to some exposure. Maybe not every single prop that we just mentioned, as I was saying, but a good portion of those are going to get added to the bankroll today. But that's all I've got, guys. Going to go ahead and cut it off there. He said the board will post once I get off the live. For sure. They just like screwing with me, right? They I don't know. It's probably pretty funny. I would imagine if you could control the board and fuck with somebody when they're on live, I would probably do it as well. So, hey, fair play to the Underdog and what they do. But you can still get an idea what to bet, right? We don't have to have the board in front of us to go out there and attack them. If they're trying to stop us from robbing them from round 4, well, they're not doing a very good job of it. But like I said, guys, Patreon page is where I'm going to post every single piece of exposure as I get to it. It'll be for Underdog and for Prize Picks. When we get the Prize Picks board for the DP World Tour, we'll be able to add some exposure there. But to show you guys the averages, played a little bit under par, 70.78 at the par 71 setup, a 3.69 birdie average. But your elite tier players, like the ones that I took for a lot of my props, played a whole lot better than these averages. So I'll be doing the same thing for round 4, taking some positive stance plays, especially because the weather looks pretty similar. So let's go to Club de Campo, bring up the 1 hour forecast and update it. And what you'll see for Sunday is that it looks extremely calm. Sub 10 miles an hour wind the entire day, 15, maybe 20 mile an hour wind gusts, which is almost exactly what we had for round 3. So these averages are pretty decent, but you got to keep in mind that the DP World Tour is not a very deep tour. You've got a lot of scrub players towards the middle to the bottom tier of that side of things. So your elite tier players that you have posted on the Prize Picks board, or you will have posted on the Prize Picks board there later, are going to be much better than the average. So for example, the slip that you may have seen me post on Twitter that I hit for round number 3 was an over on Angel Ahora birdies and also an over on Tom McKibben birdies. They were at 4 birdies a pop. The average for round 2 was 3.89 per round, which meant they were pretty much at the average, especially when you eliminate all of the shitty players towards the bottom. About a 4 birdie average is, I think, pretty reasonable for the half-decent guys that are in the field. Tom McKibben and Angel Ahora were not average players, well above average players. In fact, Ahora is gaining like 1.2 shots gained per round. McKibben, he didn't have as good a form, but he is an elite tier birdie maker. He was a top 10 birdie maker on the DP World Tour before he left for Live. Neither one of those guys should have been at the field average. So when we get that board later, we'll be able to take a look at that. But if we get some of those elite tier birdie makers at 4 again, I'll be shopping them for an over. And then even some 69.5s and some of the elite tier players that we have in the field, shooting -2 is, I think, well within reason too. So those will be a few leans that I'm looking at the Spanish Open side a little bit later. But for all of that, you guys can find that on my Patreon page. As I said, every slip will be posted there. And of course, the spreadsheets that I was showing you guys before for DFS can also be found over there. On there, I have all my projections, also my entire player pool posted. Ownership for everyone is there, so you guys can make your game theory decisions throughout your entire lineups. It's also got my entire player pool, along with the player pool tags giving my exact reasoning for using players. So not only do I show you guys my exact player pool and who I'm using, but also all the reasoning behind it so that you can learn and become a better player yourself. You can see, the rhyme and reason for it, right? Why I'm getting over the field and some of the guys towards the top end of the board, et cetera, et cetera. But that's all I got, guys. Still waking up here on the East Coast. I got to get another coffee in my system before the rest of the action today. But best of luck with everything that you guys are going with. Let's go out there and finish this week strong. For the NFL slate tomorrow, make sure to check out the video that's up on my channel as well. I do post breakdowns for NFL every single weekend. For main slate for week 6, there's a video dropping covering DFS. It's got my top QB stacks of the week. I'm going over a few game environments that I'm getting over the field on, and that's on both sides. I like both quarterbacks from 3 different games this week, so check out that preview. And also a few props over there, so if you're on Underdog and Prize Picks, I have a few different prop slips that I drop towards the end of that as well. And also for Showdown for NFL, because this next week we don't have golf. It is going to be a week off from that perspective. I believe we have a DP World Tour event though, so we will be covering all of that on the Patreon page, perhaps even on my X/Twitter, maybe even a video or something like that for the DP World Tour props next week, but mostly an NFL week. So that's why I mentioned that with my NFL content. Make sure to check that out if you guys haven't already. But that's all. Appreciate you. You said good luck and stay safe. Amen to that, right back at you. And what's going on, Mr. Maui as well. Have a fantastic rest of your Saturday, and let's have ourselves a slate, guys.